In this part, we'll be doing the cranial nerves, oculomotor, trochlear, abducent, its applied aspect, and the other nerves and vessels which are there in the orbit, that is the ophthalmic nerve and artery, and in very important parasympathetic ganglia, that is the ciliary ganglion. Before we commence our lecture, let's revise what we did in the last lecture. That was the extraocular muscles, the summary of the actions of muscle. This was the diagrammatic representation that I showed you with the center of the pupil, and this is the cornea, the upper margin of the cornea, and we discussed that all the movements, that is elevation, depression, adduction, and abduction, they were taking place in reference to the center point of the pupil or the center point of the cornea, and the upper margin of the rim of the cornea, that was, or the upper margin of the pupil, that was the reference point for the intorsion and extorsion. So this is for your quick revision, the medial rectus, which was causing the adduction, and lateral rectus, which was causing the abduction. The superior rectus, that was causing the elevation along with the intorsion. Intorsion was the main, the elevation was the main primary action, and the secondary action was the intorsion followed by the adduction. So remember, both the superiors, the superior rectus and superior obliques, they helps in intorsion. Intorsion was the movement when the upper margin of the cornea or the upper margin of the pupil was medially rotated. The opposite action was the extorsion, in which the upper margin was rotating laterally. This is brought about by both the inferior muscles, that is the inferior oblique and the inferior rectus. So this is for the quick summary of the extraocular muscle actions. This we had already discussed, and what is important for today's lecture is the nerve supply of these, which we discussed in the previous class, that all the muscles are supplied by the oculomotor nerves except superior oblique, which is supplied by the trochlear, superior oblique, which is supplied by the trochlear, and the lateral rectus, which is supplied by the abducent nerve. So by that revision in our mind, now let's begin our today's lecture. Now this picture is showing the cranial nerve on the brainstem, and we can see the various cranial nerve in relation. For us to know today is these three cranial nerves. The first one is the oculomotor nerve, and we know that the oculomotor nerve is going to supply all the extraocular muscles except the superior oblique and the lateral rectus. This is the trochlear nerve, which is the fourth cranial nerve, and this is the sixth cranial nerve, which is the abducent nerve, which is between the pons and the medullary junction. So now let's begin our lecture. This is the same diagrammatic representation which is shown over here in the actual brain, and you can see these nerves over here. This is the oculomotor, the trochlear nerve, and the abducent nerve. The relation of the trochlear is, this is the midbrain part, so it will be coming out from the crus cerebri. These are the two crus cerebri. It will be in relation anterior to the crus cerebri, coming posterior, from posterior to anterior aspect. This is the only nerve, cranial nerve, which emerges from the posterior or the dorsal aspect of the brainstem and then comes ventrally. So this is the trochlear nerve, and this between the pons and the medulla, in this pontomedullary junction, this nerve which arises is the sixth cranial nerve. The rest of the cranial nerve will be dealt subsequently in subsequent lectures. So before we begin with the cranial nerves, oculomotor, trochlear, and the abducent nerve, let's begin with the ophthalmic nerve. So we know that this ophthalmic nerve comes from the trigeminal nerve. This is a trigeminal nerve which gives off three branches: the ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular nerve. The ophthalmic division, the branches of which goes into the superior orbital fissure, the maxillary nerve which goes into the foramen rotundum, and the mandibular nerve which goes into the foramen ovate. So in the orbit, we are concerned with the ophthalmic nerve. These are the branches from the ophthalmic nerve which will be seen in the orbit also. So the first branch is the frontal nerve, followed by the lacrimal and the nasociliary nerve. So the frontal nerve, this is the ophthalmic division, and this is the frontal nerve, the lacrimal nerve, and the nasociliary nerve. The frontal nerve is going to supply divide into the supraorbital and the supratrochlear branches, which will come out from the supraorbital foramen. They are going to supply They are going to come exterior to the forehead and they are going to supply the forehead, scalp, conjunctiva upper and central eyelid area. The second nerve, which is the lacrimal nerve. The lacrimal nerve is going to supply the lateral eyelid area, the lacrimal gland, as well as the conjunctiva. The third nerve, which is a nasociliary nerve. The nasociliary nerve divides into anterior and posterior ethmoidal nerves. This we discussed when we did the walls of the orbit. So they were the posterior and the anterior ethmoidal foramina. They were located in which wall of the orbit? They were located in the medial wall. So through them, the anterior and posterior ethmoidal nerves, which are branches from the nasociliary, will enter into the ethmoidal air sinuses and they are going to supply the ethmoidal sinuses. The other branch is the infratrochlear branch, which also comes from the nasociliary. The infratrochlear branch, this is that infratrochlear branch, this is going to come out and will supply the medial eyelid area. The other nerves are the long ciliary nerve and the sympathetic fibers. The long ciliary nerve is going to pierce the sclera and supply the cornea, iris, and the ciliary body. And for the dilation of pupil, the sympathetic fibers from the nasociliary. So these are the branches of the ophthalmic nerve. Now coming on to the ophthalmic artery. The ophthalmic artery comes out from the internal carotid artery. This is the ophthalmic artery. Then it divides into further branches. Now let's see in the orbit, because we see these ophthalmic artery, what are the branches from them? So the first branch is the central retinal artery, followed by the supraorbital artery, posterior ciliary artery, some muscular artery, the lacrimal artery, anterior and posterior ethmoidal arteries, which again will pass through the same anterior and posterior ethmoidal foramina. This is the lacrimal artery, which is in relation to the lacrimal gland, and then it terminates as the zygomatic branch, gives a zygomatic branch. Then the further branches are the dorsal nasal and supratrochlear arteries. These arteries are also seen in relation to the orbit. So this is a diagrammatic representation in which all this arterial system of the ophthalmic artery, the central artery, the lacrimal artery, all these arteries, supratrochlear artery, the branches from the ophthalmic artery, which is seen, which passes along the ophthalmic artery, which passes along with the optic nerve. So they are all, the lacrimal artery, they are all supplying the region of the orbit from the superior view. This diagram this is a view from the anterior aspect, showing all the superficial arteries. The venous system. So coming to the lymph vessels, in the orbital cavity, there is no lymph vessels or nodes which are present. The orbital fat that is present abundantly in the optic cavity, this is going to fill the interval between the optic nerve and all the four recti muscle. So it is going to act as a cushion to stabilize the eyeball. So this again is the same representation in which we can see that these are the nerves which are entering into the orbit, which we just discussed. Again, the other view. Now coming on to the same cranial nerve on the brainstem. In this we already discussed. So we'll start with the oculomotor nerve, which is a very important nerve supplying all the major part of the extraocular muscles except the superior oblique and the lateral rectus. Rest all supplied by the oculomotor nerve. So oculomotor nerve is a third cranial nerve. All extraocular muscles are supplied by it except lateral rectus. And remember, this is supplied by abducent and supratrochlear, which is supplied by the superior oblique, which is supplied by the trochlear nerve. Rest every muscle of extraocular muscle supplied by oculomotor. So if oculomotor is injured, the major number of extraocular muscles are going to be paralyzed. This not only supplies the extraocular muscle, so not only it is motor, but it also carry the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers for two more involuntary muscles, that are the sphincter pupillae and ciliaris. These two muscles we did in the last lecture and we know the functions of them. So the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers of these two muscles are also contributed by the oculomotor nerve. Now, this is a summary of all these distribution of the oculomotor nerve supplying all the muscles except superior oblique and lateral rectus, motor to these, and parasympathetic to constrictor pupillae and ciliary muscles. Now, let's see how this oculomotor nerve arises and what is the course of this oculomotor nerve. The oculomotor nerve nuclei is situated in the at the level of the midbrain. So this is the nucleus in that at the level of the midbrain. This is a portion of the midbrain, pons, and this is the medulla. All the cranial nerves, you will learn these in the neuroanatomy in detail, how these cranial nerve nuclei are arising. So this is a location at the level of this is a superior colliculus of the midbrain, and this is the inferior colliculus. So at the level of the superior colliculus from the midbrain arises the oculomotor nerve nuclei. The oculomotor nerve nuclei have two components. One is the oculomotor somatic motor components, which is containing the somatic motor neuron. Dorsal to it, at the level of the midbrain, this is the midbrain section. This is the posterior and the anterior part of it. And dorsal to this oculomotor nucleus is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, which is carrying the preganglionic parasympathetic neurons, which are going to supply what? They are going to supply the ciliaris and the constrictor pupillae muscle. And from the main motor nucleus, somatic motor neurons, the fibers which will arise, they are going to supply the extraocular muscle that we just discussed. So from these neurons in the midbrain level, they are going to form the oculomotor nerve. So oculomotor nerve is going to come out from the midbrain, as we have shown in the previous picture, the representation from the inferior view of the brain. So as you can see, at the level of the midbrain, at superior colliculus level is the main motor nucleus, oculomotor nucleus for the extraocular muscle, and for the ciliaris and constrictor pupillae, the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, which carries the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers. This is representing the accessory nucleus, Edinger-Westphal nucleus of oculomotor. So two components of oculomotor nerve nuclei are there. The main oculomotor nucleus was supplying the major part of the extraocular muscle, except the superior oblique and lateral rectus. So they are called a somatic efferent nucleus. And this functional column is somatic efferent functional column. This functional column, again, you will learn in detail in the neuroanatomy. So this accessory nucleus, which is Edinger-Westphal, which was supplying the sphincter pupillae and ciliaris muscle, is part of the general visceral efferent. There are some central connections to the oculomotor nerve, which is corticonuclear fibers, which will help in accommodation reflex. I think you know the accommodation reflex when you accommodate to see the near objects, accommodation of the eye. From pretectal nucleus, which is for the direct and consensual pupillary reflexes in response to light. And there are further connections also, which you will learn in detail later on. So these are the two functional columns that I was talking about. The general somatic efferent, which is also called as a somatic efferent, that is from the motor nucleus to extraocular muscles, all these fibers, except to the lateral rectus and superior oblique. These all fibers are representing the somatic efferents. The preganglionic parasympathetic fibers, which were arising from Edinger-Westphal nucleus to the sphincter pupillae and ciliary muscle, which led to the contraction of pupil and accommodation reflexes, they are contributing to the general visceral efferent. Again, the summary where the cranial nerve, this oculomotor nerve was arising at the level of the midbrain. So this was the crus cerebri from the anterior aspect of it. At the level of the midbrain, the cranial nerve, third oculomotor, was arising. Now let's see the course of this cranial nerve. So we have discussed with the nucleus, we have discussed what was the level of origin of the oculomotor nerve. They were arising where? In the intraneural part. They were arising at the level of the midbrain. This is the cut section of the midbrain. So at the midbrain level, at the level of the superior colliculus, the oculomotor nerve nuclei are present. The oculomotor nerve nuclei from both the main nucleus and from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, they form the oculomotor nerve. So this is the origin of the oculomotor nerve from the nerve nuclei. This is the fiber of oculomotor which is coming out. So you can see this is the oculomotor nerve which comes out. Now what is this in front of it? In front of it, this is the area of the lateral, over here is the area of the cavernous sinus. So through the cavernous sinus, it passes along with the other cranial nerve, that is the fourth and the sixth cranial nerve. It passes through the cavernous sinus. So this is the cavernous, goes through the cavernous sinus, and then when it further moves ahead, it reaches the superior orbital fissure. And remember, we did the contents of the superior orbital fissure. So it enters the superior orbital fissure, and through the superior orbital fissure, it enters into the orbit. And when it enters into the orbit, it supplies the major part of the extraocular muscle, except the superior oblique and lateral rectus. So this is a course in brief of the oculomotor nerve. This I've just described how it was arising from the intraneural part, from the midbrain level. And this is again the cut section, which again you will do in the neuroanatomy in detail, that how it arises the nucleus. This is the fiber of the oculomotor which is coming out from the midbrain. Now, when it from the nucleus, when the fiber is forming the oculomotor nerve, then it reaches the base of the brain and it arises from the crus cerebri, the ventral aspect of the crus cerebri. So it will be in relation to the medial. What will be related lateral to the crus cerebri? The trochlear nerve, because I've just told you that the trochlear nerve is the only nerve which comes from posterior aspect to the ventral aspect. Now, from the base of the brain, it will then reach into the cavernous sinus and will be related to the lateral. It passes through the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus, and it is related superior most. Below it will be the trochlear nerve, ophthalmic nerve, and the maxillary divisions of the trigeminal nerve. Abducent nerve, remember, it is into the medial wall. So when it goes through the cavernous sinus, it reaches where? It reaches into the superior orbital fissure. And remember, when we did the contents of superior orbital fissure, we said in the superior orbital fissure, so in the ventral part of the cavernous sinus itself, it divides into two divisions before reaching the superior orbital fissure, into the upper division and the lower division of the oculomotor nerve. So these are the upper and lower divisions of the oculomotor nerve, which is present in the middle part of the superior orbital fissure. Between them is the nasociliary nerve, and along with it, in the middle part of the superior orbital fissure, the abducent nerve is also passing. Now, from the superior orbital fissure, the oculomotor nerve will reach the orbit, and in the orbit it's going to supply the extraocular muscles, except lateral rectus and superior oblique. Now, the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, that was the component, the parasympathetic fiber component, the nucleus from the oculomotor nerve, this accessory nucleus, Edinger-Westphal nucleus. The postganglionic fibers are going to pass through the short ciliary nerve and will supply the eyeball, where the constrictor pupillae muscle and the ciliary muscle. So this in brief is the supply of the distribution of the oculomotor nerve. So these actions we have already discussed. So you know the effects of motor effect of the oculomotor nerve, how it is going to turn the eye upward, downwards and medially and elevate the upper eyelid. What will be the effects of parasympathetic fibers which are coming from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus? They are going to constrict the pupil and will help in accommodation reflex of the eye. So this we did in the last lecture also, how this is the pupillary reaction, reaction to the light. With the bright light, how the sphincter pupillae is contracting and leading to constriction of the pupil, and how with the dim light the dilator pupillae was contracting. This is not parasympathetic, this is a sympathetic innervation which dilates. So the oculomotor is involved in the sphincter pupillae, not the dilator pupillae. Now we come to the oculomotor nerve lesions. The oculomotor nerve leads to lateral squint, ptosis, diplopia, pupillary dilation. Why pupillary dilation? Because the sphincter pupillae was supplied by the Edinger-Westphal nuclear component of the oculomotor nerve. In the lesion of oculomotor nerve, this is going to, instead of constriction, it is going to dilate. So this is the effect, pupillary dilation. Loss of accommodation, impaired downward inward movement of the eyeball on the damaged side. So basically it is going to cause the lateral squint. The lateral squint, why? Because the the medial rectus will be involved in the oculomotor nerve lesion, and the eye because of the unopposed action of the medial rectus, the center of the pupil, that is going to be deviated towards the lateral side. So remember, lateral squint will be found in the oculomotor nerve lesion. Now, oculomotor nerve lesion also is associated with the ptosis. Ptosis is drooping of the eyelid. Why this happens? Because the levator palpebrae superioris is also supplied with the oculomotor, and it is going to, with the nerve injury of oculomotor, this is going to lead to ptosis or drooping of the eyelid. Pupillary dilation will also be accompanied in oculomotor nerve lesion because of the associated the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, which was supplying the constrictor pupillae, that is also lost, so leads to pupillary dilation. And the squint, which is characteristically found, is lateral squint because of the unopposed, because the medial rectus is involved, and because of the unopposed section of the lateral rectus, the lateral rectus is going to, which is not supplied by the oculomotor, is going to lead to the lateral deviation of the eyeball. The preganglionic parasympathetic fibers, in this representation, you can say when the oculomotor nerve fiber is forming. The component from the motor nucleus, the oculomotor nerve fiber is medially placed, and this green fiber, which is the fiber from the from Edinger-Westphal nucleus, parasympathetic. So these are going to be damaged earlier because they are superficially placed. Any damage which takes place to the oculomotor, these fibers are the first to hit. So the compression signs are going, the earliest, the first sign of compression of the oculomotor nerve is therefore slowing of pupillary response to light. So if there is oculomotor nerve lesion, the first response will be, if you bring a light towards the eye of the affected individual, there will be slowing of pupillary response. That means the constriction of pupillae will be slowed. Now, once we are thorough with the oculomotor nerve, now we should know about the certain ganglia which is around the head and neck. So there are the parasympathetic ganglia there are 4 ganglia which are associated with the branches of trigeminal nerve. And what they do, they receive the preganglionic fibers either from oculomotor, facial or glossopharyngeal nerves. One by one, we'll be doing all these in subsequent lectures. One ganglia that we'll be doing today is the ciliary ganglion. So now we begin with the ciliary ganglion. This is the ciliary ganglion, which is located in the orbit. And let's see where it is present. So it's present, the ciliary ganglion is present near the apex of the orbit, and it's between the optic nerve and the abducent nerve. It is very small in diameter, 1 to 2 millimeter. It is a parasympathetic ganglion. And basically, it is a relay station for the fibers which are supplying the sphincter pupillae and ciliaris muscle. Topographically, it is related to the nasociliary nerve, and functionally, it is related to the oculomotor nerve. This is the oculomotor nerve. Functionally, it is related to the oculomotor nerve, but topographically, it is related. It is in vicinity of the nasociliary nerve. Now, if you see the ganglion carefully, the ciliary ganglion, you will observe that there are certain branches from the ciliary ganglion, and there are some roots to the ciliary ganglion. These are the roots 1, 2, and 3. So these 3 roots are basically, these are the axons which are passing through the ciliary ganglion, the parasympathetic fibers. These are the fibers which are entering into the posterior aspect of the ciliary ganglion. So you can see the 3 roots which are entering, which are the nerve fiber axons, which are entering into the ciliary ganglion, carrying the parasympathetic fibers. This will be the parasympathetic root. The sympathetic fibers will be the sympathetic root, and the sensory fibers will be into the sensory root. So this root is basically the entering axons into the posterior aspect of the ganglion. And remember that only the parasympathetic fibers are going to synapse into the ciliary ganglion. Rest, all the 2 roots, sympathetic and sensory, are just going to pass through it without any synapse. What I mean by that, I'll come to it in the next subsequent slide. So these are the 3 roots I was talking about, which is the fibers which are entering into the posterior aspect of the ciliary ganglion. This is the ciliary ganglion. So remember, the first parasympathetic root is derived from the nerve to inferior oblique, which is a branch of oculomotor. So this is the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, we know, which is at the level of the midbrain. From the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, the fibers reaches the oculomotor nerve, and from the oculomotor nerve, which branch? The nerve to inferior nerve to inferior oblique. It passes through the nerve to inferior oblique, and then this is the only route or the fiber, parasympathetic motor fiber, which is going to relay into the which is going to synapse in the ciliary ganglion. You can see this is the preganglionic fiber which is synapsing in the ciliary ganglion, and then the postganglionic fibers are then reaching the constrictor pupillae and ciliary muscle. So this is the parasympathetic route, and it is the motor route which is going to bring about action into the constrictor pupillae and ciliary muscle. The sympathetic route is a vasomotor. Sympathetic is arising from the T1 spinal segment level and through the superior cervical ganglion and plexus around the internal carotid artery. It is going to reach the ciliary ganglion, and remember I told you it is not going to synapse in the ciliary ganglion. It is going to pass through the ciliary ganglion without any synapse and will reach the eyeball. The third route is the sensory route, or which carries the sensory fibers, and it is passing through the nasociliary nerve. And nasociliary nerve, remember, was the branch of ophthalmic division of trigeminal nerve. This also passes without any synapse in the ciliary ganglion and reaches the eyeball. Now, simplifying this, let's see how these routes, ciliary ganglion routes, are going to supply. The parasympathetic, remember, is motor to constrictor pupillae and ciliary muscle, constricting the pupil and ciliary muscle to contracting, it contracts to make the lens more convex. The sympathetic fibers will supply the dilator pupillae, causing dilation of the pupil and blood vessels of the eyeball. So this is basically vasomotor. Sensory fibers is going to supply the sensory to reach it. Carries the sensory sensations from the eyeball, that is touch, pain, and thermal sensation from the eyeball. It will be carried towards the ciliary ganglion. Now this is very important. Learn about the connections of the ciliary ganglion. So what was the role of ciliary ganglion? I've told you ciliary ganglion was the relay station for the effect on the ciliaris muscle and constrictor pupillae muscle. So this was the relay station. So only the synapse which is taking place is through the parasympathetic fiber. So this green is representing the parasympathetic fiber. So this is the parasympathetic route in this picture. This is the sympathetic route, and you can see this blue fiber is the sympathetic fiber which is passing without any relay. And this red one is the sensory route. This is the sensory route. Again, this is also passing without any relay through the ciliary ganglion. We only, without any synapse, sorry. So only synapse which is taking place within the ciliary ganglion is this parasympathetic motor route. Now, this flow chart is very important because we usually ask you this connections of the ciliary ganglion, or whether if it comes as a question, you have to write it. So parasympathetic motor to ciliary muscle and constrictor pupillae muscle, how it is going to act. Now let's see that. So in the previous slide, I had showed you how from the Edinger, so it will start from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus in the midbrain. From there to the oculomotor nerve. This is the oculomotor nerve. And this is the branch of the oculomotor nerve, which is branch to inferior oblique. Through this nerve, it synapses, relays into the ciliary ganglion. So this fiber, we'll call it the preganglionic fiber. This is all preganglionic fiber till it reaches the ciliary ganglion. Once it has reached the ciliary ganglion, there is postganglionic neuron over here. From there, this from here, the axon which arises will be the postganglionic fiber. So this postganglionic fiber, which is arising from the ciliary ganglion, will pass through this nerve. This nerve, which is branched from the ciliary ganglion, is short ciliary nerve. So this nerve is short ciliary nerve. So through short ciliary nerve, this fiber, postganglionic fiber, which is represented by this color over here. So this is going to reach which muscle? The constrictor pupillae and ciliaris muscle, which is going to cause the pupillary constriction and accommodation. So this is the motor response, which is brought about by the parasympathetic route, motor route from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, oculomotor, branch of oculomotor, that is inferior oblique branch, relays or synapses in ciliary ganglion through short ciliary nerve reaches its site of action, that is constrictor pupillae and ciliaris muscle. Another flow chart that is important for you, the sympathetic route, simplified how the sympathetic fibers actually are arising from the superior cervical ganglion, the fibers, post-sympathetic fibers of the superior cervical ganglion. They form plexus around the internal carotid artery, and then it enters the ciliary ganglion without any synapse in the ciliary ganglion, making any synapse. It emerges through the short ciliary nerve again and reaches which muscle? The dilator pupillae and the blood vessels of eyeball. And the dilator pupillae is going to bring about the dilation of the pupil. So this is the sympathetic route. Now coming to the sensory route. Now this is the last route, which is the sensory route. The sensory route is going to carry the sensory fibers. So the sensory fibers from the eyeball, that is the touch, pain, and temperature sensation, they are going to reach the eyeball from here, these sensations. So this goes in opposite direction. This is sensory fiber. They reach the ganglion in the short ciliary nerve and then traverse the ganglion without any synapse. You can see there is not making any synapse, and then joins the nasociliary nerve. And this is the sensory route. So through this pathway from the eyeball, these all sensations carried through the short ciliary nerve into the ciliary ganglion without any synapse, reaching the sensory route, joins the nasociliary. Now this is the sensory route of ciliary ganglion. So all these three routes you should learn by heart, which comes as connections of the ciliary ganglion. So the purpose of the ciliary ganglion, it is a relay station for the action on the sphincter pupillae, ciliary muscle, and so basically to contract these muscles through the parasympathetic route. The sympathetic route is for the vasomotor and for the dilator pupillae, and to carry the sensations from the eyeball. Now, coming to the last part, which is the branches of the ciliary ganglion. The ciliary ganglion, I have showed you the branches were the short ciliary nerves, and there are around 8 to 10 short ciliary nerves, which will contain all these fibers. So you had seen in the previous picture how from the short ciliary nerve were carrying the sympathetic fiber, sensory fiber, as well as parasympathetic fibers for light reflex and for accommodation reflex. Now we come to the next cranial nerve, which is the trochlear nerve. The trochlear nerve is the fourth cranial nerve, and the functional component that it carries is a general somatic efferent, because it is supplying the superior oblique muscle. The nucleus, the starting point of the nucleus, which is again at the level of the midbrain. So earlier you saw that at the level of superior colliculus was the third cranial nerve. At the level of inferior colliculus of the midbrain is the trochlear nerve. Then it courses into the superior orbital fissure, comes out from the base, how it related to the cavernous sinus and how it comes into the superior orbital fissure, we'll see to it. So in this picture you can see this was the midbrain, the pons and the medulla. So medial to the crus cerebri, this was the oculomotor nerve, and lateral to it, coming from the posterior aspect, this is the trochlear nerve on both the sides. So where is the trochlear nerve nucleus? The trochlear nerve nucleus is again in the midbrain at the level of inferior colliculus. So this is the level of inferior colliculus, and this is the trochlear nerve nuclei. Remember, at the level of superior colliculus, the oculomotor was coming out from the ventral aspect. But what happens to the trochlear nerve nucleus? It winds around and goes into the posterior aspect and then comes into the anterior aspect. That is why in relation to this was the crus cerebri. In relation to the crus cerebri, when you see ventrally, medially will come the oculomotor and laterally will be relation of the trochlear nerve fiber. So this is the intraneural course of the trochlear nerve. The motor nucleus, which is located just now, I've described how this at the level of inferior, again this will be done in detail in the neuroanatomy portion. So the trochlear nerve, how this nucleus is at the level of the midbrain, at the level of inferior colliculus, and how it is decussating to the opposite side and coming out from the posterior aspect to the ventral aspect of the crus cerebri. So this is on the, it reaches from the on the dorsal surface of the brainstem and then comes ventrally. This is important relation of the trochlear nerve. So once it has come out from the level of the brainstem, this is showing the course of the trochlear nerve. When it comes out of it, that it reaches the cavernous sinus area, and in the region of the cavernous sinus, it passes through the lateral wall, same as oculomotor, but passes below the oculomotor through the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. And from the cavernous sinus, then it reaches the superior orbital fissure, and from the superior orbital fissure, it enters into the orbit and supplies only one muscle. It is motor to superior oblique. Now coming to the trochlear nerve lesion. So the trochlear nerve is going to supply the superior oblique, and we should remember what were the actions of superior oblique. So this was the superior oblique, and remember what were the actions. The superior oblique was causing depression of the eyeball, it was causing abduction, and it was causing the intorsion of the eyeball. So by keeping those things in mind, the lesions of trochlear nerve is going to result in diplopia, inability to rotate the eye inferolaterally. So the eye is going to deviate upward and slightly inward. So opposite action is going to, it leads to downward rotation. So now because it is injured, so it will lead to upward and slightly inward rotation, upward and slightly inward rotation of the deviation of the eyeball. So in this, what will happen? The person will have difficulty in walking downstairs. Why the person will have difficulty in walking downstairs? Because he has the inability to look down, because the superior oblique was causing what action? It was causing the depression of the pupil. So when the eyeball is adducted, he is unable to look down or depress the pupil. So it leads to double vision diplopia when the person is looking down. For example, when the person is going down from the stairs, and his eyeball is adducted, he will not be able to look down or depress his pupil. So, and this leads to diplopia, double vision. So to compensate for the diplopia, the person will incline the head anteriorly and laterally towards the side of the normal eye. So the head tilt is created away from the side of the parietic muscle. So this is a characteristic picture in which which shows the injury to the trochlear nerve. Now coming to the last cranial nerve, which is the abducent nerve. The abducent nerve is entirely motor nerve, and it supplies the lateral rectus muscle. So somatic efferent, similar as the trochlear nerve. It is the most vulnerable cranial nerve to damage in the traumas involving the cranium. The abducent nerve nuclei is the somatic efferent column, because it is innervating the lateral rectus muscle in the orbit. The nucleus, the origin of the nucleus is from the level of the pons. Remember, from the midbrain was the oculomotor and the trochlear nerve, but the abducent nerve arises from at the level of the pons in the median plane. So this is a cut section of the pons, part of the brainstem, and this is the nucleus of the abducent nerve. And the abducent nerve then passes in front and it emerges out at the junction of pons and medulla like this. So this is the emerging point of the abducent nerve fiber. In the brainstem also, look into the junction, the pons and the medulla. This is the pontomedullary junction. So this, from the ventralmost aspect, this nerve which comes out is the abducent nerve. Lateral to it is the facial nerve. This big nerve over here at the level of the pons is the trigeminal nerve. So the three nerves we have completed: oculomotor, trochlear, and this is the third, the last one, that is the abducent nerve, which we'll be doing right now. So the abducent nerve nuclei, which was present at the level of the pons, emerges between the junction of the pons and the medulla, and then it reaches the cavernous sinus, and in the cavernous sinus it reaches the medial wall along with the internal carotid artery. So this is the abducent nerve fiber. From the cavernous sinus, it reaches the superior orbital fissure and it passes through which part of the superior orbital fissure? The middle part of the superior orbital fissure, along with the two divisions of the oculomotor and the nasociliary nerve. And from the superior orbital fissure, it reaches the orbit and it will supply only one muscle, that is the lateral rectus muscle. So its function, because it supplies the lateral rectus muscle, its function will be the lateral movement of the eye, which is the abduction of eyeball. Now let's see what will happen if there is injury to the abducent nerve. The injury to the abducent nerve will result in damage, the effect on the lateral rectus will be affected. So inability to move the eye laterally, or you can see the abduction of eyeball will not be happening, and this will lead to diplopia occurs on the lateral gaze. So what will happen because of the paralysis of the lateral rectus, abducent nerve paralysis, there will be medial deviation of the eye. So in this picture, you can see in this part, you can see this is a normal eye. So the eye is deviated medially. Why this is deviated medially? Because of the unopposed action of the medial rectus. Medial rectus is normal. Medial rectus is supplied by oculomotor nerve. But the lateral rectus, which was supplied by the abducent nerve on this side, is paralyzed. So only medial rectus is going to act unopposed. There is no opposing effect from the lateral rectus. So the eyeball is going to shift medially. So this is going to lead to medial squint. So remember, medial deviation or medial squint will be seen in the abducent nerve injury because of the paralysis of lateral rectus muscle, whereas in oculomotor nerve, you'll have the lateral squint. So again, this medial squint, this characteristic picture, medial squint will be seen in case of abducent nerve injury because there is no supply to the lateral rectus, and the opposite, lateral squint, happens in oculomotor nerve injury. Now, this is the summary of all the squint, abnormal deviation of the eyeball squint or strabismus, which is also called as strabismus. So medial squint, remember, it is because of the damage to the abducent nerve because the lateral rectus has been paralyzed, and damage to oculomotor nerve because of the damage to medial rectus will lead to the lateral squint. And the lateral squint will also be associated with the dropping of the eyelid, ptosis, which is called as ptosis. Why? Because the levator palpebrae superioris, which is also supplied by the oculomotor, is also paralyzed. And the damage to the trochlear nerve is supplying the superior oblique. These nerve supplies of all the extraocular muscle, very important for you. So this is going to cause a diplopia while looking downwards. So this was in. By this we have completed the three cranial nerves in relation to the orbit, that was oculomotor, trochlear, and abducent. One important ganglia which we have covered was ciliary ganglion. And at the end of this class, you should be able to draw the connections. You should be able to enumerate, make the flow chart, write about the ciliary ganglion, its location, its branches, its roots, the parasympathetic root, sympathetic root, sensory root, its connections, ciliary ganglion connections with the help of the flow chart that you should be able to make about the ciliary ganglion. And you should be able to correlate all the extraocular muscle movement along with the squint, the nerve supply of the extraocular muscle and its related applied, that is the squint, medial squint, lateral squint, and superior oblique paralysis. Thank you.